Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Really do appreciate it. On today's show, we have new exclusive reporting from the wonderful Daily Poster website about how Big Pharma bought Krysten Sinema, because she wasn't always like this. She wasn't always like the crazy, kooky girl who would vote against the minimum wage and, just be like, quirky, here's my ring that says F you, literally, and post that on Instagram. No, she used to be a pretty, hardcore, dyed-in-the-wool Ralph Nader, of all people, supporting leftist. We'll take a look at that transformation on today's show. Also, lawmakers are insisting that Havana syndrome is now the result of escalating attacks. So, guys, this may be concerning. Are you, or someone you know, a United States diplomat? Well, you may be at risk from hearing cicadas out late at night. Pretty crazy stuff. And also, Krysten Sinema, speaking of her, we have our last story on her as well. This is from Ken Klippenstein in The Intercept. This is about how Krysten Sinema literally teaching a course on fundraising at Arizona State University for graduate students, literally about how to fundraise. Imagine if you're a politically interested person taking class from Krysten Sinema at this moment in time about how to fundraise. What must be going through your minds? Wow, that's something else. Ken Klippenstein has that story. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready today and getting started with this very interesting, kind of origin story about Krysten Sinema, because you may have heard, I don't think we've talked about it too much on this show, but you may have heard at some point or another that she is, or at least she did have at some point, a pretty left-wing background. So it's all about, how Big Pharma flipped Krysten Sinema, who is now threatening to be their key obstructionist. The pharmaceutical industry is very savvy, said Representative O'Connor during a Daily Poster live chat. They pick one or two people they need to block things on the relevant committees or at the relevant time. They just have these few highly placed people up there, and really they're the ones who are going to be willing to stand up, because there's one thing to, tacitly support it, go to all the fundraisers, know all the people, but it's another thing to be the person who's going to draw all that media attention, going to draw that activist attention, and be the person who people are going to not let have a normal, comfortable life. Which, by the way, talking about, all these interruptions she's experienced, it wasn't just a bathroom incident, she's, been interrupted and hassled on the plane. It is so important. That should be the minimum standard. That should be the minimum standard of how I believe senators should be treated when they step into public. People should be voicing their displeasure with them and doing it in exactly that kind of way. Nobody who ever confronted Krysten Sinema did it in any kind of vile, any kind of disgusting, aggressive, insulting, derogatory way. Just asking, in very close and personal ways, because again, this was literally their last resort. She would not talk to them under any circumstances, and they would just not be really given the time of day by her. So it may differ from Congress to Congress, where Connor explained he's a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. We try to get 90 to 95% of the caucus. They are focused not on 90%, but the blockers, because that's really what you do. When you're in a position like Krysten Sinema, who is really serving the interests of Big Pharma, you're trying to get just a few little things not to go through. If you just, or in this case, it's still a bit tougher because it's the whole bill. And the bill is popular, and the bill has the support of so much of the Democratic caucus. But, most of the time, you're just trying to, all you got to do is just say no. All you got to do is, stir the confusion, the waters a little bit. Just say, it's going to be too expensive. We're not sure what could happen. There could be massive losses in jobs and innovation. This kind of stuff. That is a traditional, specifically a Big Pharma move. But, it is very, very, possible and very probable that this stuff happens, and Connor talking about it here, he knows better than me, that it happens on the regular. So here he is. It looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with the audio here. Just one moment. Okay, there we go. This is David Sirota talking.
How much do you think the influence of campaign donors, corporate influence, dark money groups, how much is that playing a role in whatever the final outcome is going to be right now?
It's a big role. I mean, you can't watch the process and say that when the American people overwhelmingly are for having prescription drugs negotiated by Medicare, basically saying that Americans shouldn't pay more than people in other countries. Actually, the bill as written allows you to pay 20% more than other countries. It was a compromise bill. And we've run on this every cycle that I remember. And yet we can't get that through. And the pharmaceutical lobby is very savvy, which is why I don't personalize the conflicts to particular senators or congresspeople. Others can, but they pick the one or two people they need to block things on the relevant committees or at the relevant time.
But I mean, like, when you're talking about, like, the thing is here, these people know what they're blocking, like, and I think it's very important. And like, as I said, what's happening with Manchin and Sinema, like, that should just be a start, as opposed to the way people like view their senators, because the crimes that they commit on like knowing life and death situation, people will live or die and face like serious medical or like health consequences based on what you do with your vote. And you're just sitting there going to fundraisers left. Like, you can't stop going to fundraisers like for 2 seconds just like in order to try and save people's lives. And it literally is just so simple. Like, everybody in every district like support, like, this is something that's like overwhelmingly popular. Like, and just every weak, lame, pathetic excuse that they have thrown at all of this for years. And like every single like left of or just anything, any movement to the left of the incredibly like right wing position where we may be at this current time, like everything that they may have done that, like, just it does not apply. Especially with by the way, the prescription drug situation, just especially egregious given like how like incredibly important, like clearly beneficial it would be. Like, the only people who I feel like the only people who could possibly be against something like that are just people who like, you know, are subscribed to like the Pharma like trade publication, or like literally members of like the Pharma lobbying group. Like, that is, or just people who like directly have their bottom lines affected by that, and or people who, of course, you know, given that this is the country that we live in, or people who, you know, judging to the fact that this is so much a corporatocracy, have had their minds so thoroughly brainwashed. Like, for example, like Uber and Lyft drivers on Prop 22, some of the stuff that Amazon was doing, like every union drive ever, like all of this stuff happens so frequently. And like, these senators, I think, like, have to be made aware. Like, if our politics is going to start to get like more poignant, like more powerful, and more actually like materially focused, people are going to have to start making, in my opinion, interactions like, you know, what we see with Manchin and Sinema the absolute norm, not the exception.
And it may differ from Congress to Congress. So we try to get 95%, but they are focused not on 90%. They're focused on the blockers. And they've succeeded, unfortunately, up till in my 5 years of Congress, blocking it. So we have to try to overcome that. I mean, we've got 95% in the caucus, but we need to push to have prescription drug reform. We need to push to have the expansion of Medicare. Again, the Dental Association is opposed to that. I wonder why. They don't want to accept Medicare prices. You know, these things have powerful interests on the other side.
And they certainly do, and they certainly have growing interest and power trying to stop them. But one of the big people on the pharmaceutical side, obviously Krysten Sinema, in this current Congress, has pretty much led the effort on behalf of Big Pharma. Pharmaceutical Political Action Committees have suddenly been funneling her more money than they did the whole 6 years she served in the U.S. House. Pharmaceutical companies can charge up to 4 times as much in the U.S. for name-brand pharmaceuticals than in other countries, in part because Congress barred Medicare from using its bulk purchasing power to negotiate lower drug prices. President Joe Biden and most Democrats support lifting that prohibition in the reconciliation legislation, a move that would save hundreds of billions of dollars, and also, you know, probably hundreds of thousands of lives, like people just getting access to these like incredibly important prescription drugs for so much less, rationing insulin, all that stuff we've heard so much about. But Sinema has been emerged as pretty much the party's most prominent opponent to the plan. Of course, she has her acolytes, her Pharma friends like Josh Gottheimer in the House. But it is still, this is like a very potent 1-2 punch of people, and like these are people who they're willing to do anything. Because they have all they got to do is just keep saying no. And they have a bunch of powerful people sucked up behind them to continue to say no. Her heel turn has been a pretty dramatic shift. So she was once a progressive activist on this stuff. She campaigned on lowering drug prices in their 2018 Senate race, and she was still calling on Congress to address the rising drug costs as recently as last year, posting in her Senate website that she was fighting to ensure life-saving drugs that would be more affordable. And there's all these tweets to be like, it's so stupid to pass something through reconciliation, or to not pass something through reconciliation. Like, some people like Joe Lieberman, they just want to vote like Republicans. Where's the fun in that? Like, literally just representing of complete and utter 180-degree heel turn here. So it's clear now the pharmaceutical industry has been courting Sinema for some time. Indeed, in March 2021, as the pharmaceutical pack was flooding money into her campaign coffers, drug lobbyists were already bragging to Beltway reporters that they had found their lead blocker in Sinema. Sinema has studiously avoided giving the public any details about where she actually stands on virtually any of the policy proposals in the Democrats' reconciliation legislation, refusing to speak with activist reporters or even other Democratic lawmakers about that. They're furious about the fact that she just will not speak. She will not give them the time of day. Because again, they just can't seem to process it with they're always trying to assume good intentions despite on just pretty much based on what is clearly going on right in front of their face about what Sinema's literally leaving negotiations to run Iron Marathon, run the Iron Man to her next big donor fundraiser. That is literally a lot of what we're seeing pretty much from her at this point. We only know Sinema has opposed Democrat drug pricing plan thanks to a political report which cited anonymous sources familiar with their thinking. Honestly, I would not be, because we don't know what it is, and the best we can do is these reports about what she's been saying, and hopefully assume they're at least somewhat accurate, whether it be Sinema's team who's leaking or people who are closer to Joe Biden, the Democratic leadership. You can judge that based on the report, sourcing, all that stuff. But, that's the best way we're going to find out about this, because I think they're just going to be keeping this negotiation largely private. But it makes sense that Sinema would be reluctant to publicly explain her opposition to the Democrats' drug pricing plan, because she would sound ridiculous, like a craven hypocrite straight out of Veep. During her 2018 Democratic primary campaign, Sinema released a direct-to-camera ad noting her family had struggled with healthcare costs when she was younger. We need to make sure that healthcare is affordable with access to low-cost prescriptions, or lowest-cost prescriptions. Again, this is not even the lowest-cost prescription bill. If she was actually saying in her campaign promise that she would be fighting to make it 0% higher. We still, as Americans, just have to pay 20% higher. At this point, that's just leaving a quarter, it's just... Come on, why not? Why that extra 20%? That's just even more of an insult in a way. But still, that just is nowhere near enough. Not sufficient in any way to please Big Pharma and Krysten Sinema. So, it is really, really something here. And of course, that Veep clip has been pretty incredible. This is the Veep noodle analogy that David Toretto was referencing.
Good morning.
How do you make two perfectly pleasant words so irritating? And here he is, the man who can't take a leak without pulling his balls.
Bring me my cerise-colored binder, Jonah.
By the way, explicit content here if you have watched Veep.
VP's base visit today. Secretary of Defense Maddox is living up to his name. He's mad as an ox.
I'm sure I can break up any cat fights when I get there. The Veep's more concerned with the hostage situation.
Yeah, I was talking to POTUS last night. He had a pro-strike hawk boner the size of Jonah, and then you talked to him about it this morning, and he's suddenly totally against the operation.
All I do is provide POTUS with the polls, cold numbers.
God, I hate numbers. I mean, there's cultures that don't even have any numbers, and they do just fine.
Well, Ben...
Yeah, that's just politics, I think, oftentimes, people talk about is like House of Cards is like Veep. Probably a little bit more like Veep, at least on the, the basic operational level. Because, there's plenty of evil crap in Veep, but it just kind of gets, lost in the shuffle of how like hilariously incompetent everybody is, which I think is more closer to the truth. So pretty much saying about you have this huge, incredible like paper trail of her just slowly, even recently having a very strong position saying we at least have to negotiate on prescription drug costs, but that has just completely gone out the window the moment Big Pharma comes calling.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our segment to tell you all about what's going on here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network this summer. We do, as I'm sure you know, have a great lineup available for you. We, of course, start with our flagship show, Newsflash, all new Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Uncultured, irregularly back every Saturday with live music and sports analysis with my co-host of the summer, Bennett Laxton. Hidden History will be brand new every Thursday on a bit of a hiatus, but will return shortly. It's the summer of podcasting. It's the summer of sounds. All you got to do is just keep listening wherever you get your podcasts, always here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network.
And we are starting to add some podcasts back in, so I just want to take a moment to clue you in about another fun podcast that's coming our way. That's right, we're bringing back the Spencer Walsh Show. I will be doing an hour on actual radio, 91.5 WMFO in Medford, and that will be the Spencer Walsh Show in podcast, coming, should be by the end of this month, so stay tuned on Spreaker.com/TSWS, wherever you get your podcast, we'll have that set up, and we will keep you informed when that is coming for sure. Bring kind of the uncultured X newsflash. That's pretty much what you can see. It's kind of a combination, uncultured and newsflash combined there. So yeah, very, very exciting stuff. Let's go to another very interesting, very disturbing story, ladies and gentlemen. We are under attack. That's right, we are under a terrorist attack. Here, this is in the Rolling Stone. Since 2016, more than 200 U.S. officials working abroad have reported experiencing Havana syndrome. It's a cluster of mysterious, unexplained, like all this stuff. It either sounds like they got a hangover, or they heard some cicadas, or there's some like really kind of psychological explanation, like that they're just making really such an incredibly big deal out of this for clearly no reason and just faking symptoms. And the government has really thought that for a long time as well, pretty much for the entire Trump term, and then now under Biden they just recently passed a bill that said that these people of all the Americans, these people need to get special treatment at Walter Reed. These CIA people who are in embassies where, I've heard theorized, because embassies are probably the biggest spot for, U.S. surveillance equipment. They put it in embassies in very, kind of hostile countries. For example, they recently built a brand new embassy under the Obama administration in Havana, Cuba, and obviously that was where the Havana syndrome started. And they could be radiation from that. That's a theory people have been, speculating about, just as a explanation for this really weird, unexplainable, completely there's no coherent narrative you could put around this entire situation. So while the reasons for the phenomenon behind the phenomenon are still unclear, Politico reported the government has turned up new evidence pointing to direct energy attacks as a cause of the symptoms. Citing 5 lawmakers and officials briefed on the matter, Politico reported that lawmakers and investigators are becoming increasingly confident. In other words, we're increasingly getting convinced that we need to, actually put a name to this, because it's just getting a little bit too weird and kind of long. We're just letting this go on without a firm, government line. So it's starting to be direct energy is the way that they're thinking about this. So what is direct energy? What are these microwave technologies? And so here's the best part. The problem is getting worse. Microwave technologies, they're not going away, folks. They're getting worse. They're threatening our troops more and more and more. And, something needs to be done about this. Give the CIA more money. Why not? That's perfect. Susan Collins and Marco Rubio have been leading the charge on this. There have been additional attacks, which is very disturbing, Collins said. It's been taken very seriously due to the director of the CIA, who has put some very highly qualified people on it. Hopefully we'll make some headway because it's a problem that's escalating, Rubio said. And it's not something that's happened in the past. It's something that has happened and it is ongoing. Havana syndrome got its name because the first U.S. and Canadian diplomats reporting strange symptoms took place in Cuba. Since then, diplomats serving in other places around the world have come forward to report symptoms, including U.S. federal employees in Austria, Siberia, and Germany. German police confirmed Friday that in August they launched an investigation into alleged sonic weapons attack on employees of the U.S. Embassy after several reported symptoms. So many potential causes have been suggested as for the possible reasons of these mysterious symptoms. So pretty much every kind of like non-governmental agency, or actually no, the CDC actually was pretty much like, most of the stuff is BS. And then the FBI came down. They did a months-long. The people from Criminal Minds, they came down there. The BAU, what's the guy? The people like the skinny young guy, Dr. Reed. Yeah, that guy from Criminal Minds. Just picture that. He was down there on Havana, in Havana, Cuba, beautiful Havana, Cuba, doing a months-long investigation with Gideon, and, I watched, the first few seasons of that, so I know he dies eventually or whatever. But, sorry if I spoiled that for you, I don't really care, but yeah, so they were down there, they were doing all this investigation. They pretty much came up and said that it was, nothing, and we're moving on. But a report by the National Academy of Sciences and Engineering and Medicine, it was concluded that it was, quote, plausible that directed pulsed radio frequency energy was behind the symptoms. The interesting thing about this here is the technology behind it, because what we don't know is, it really seems like the best stuff that we know about this is really it was developed for, military use, but it's really been pawned off by this kind of non-lethal weaponry has been pawned off to police departments all across the country for things like protests, crowd control, just sending off these, beams that make you hear these awful noises inside your head. You get headaches, dizzy, nauseous if you stay there for too long a time. But these are big trucks. These are portable, or not portable little spray guns that you can hide behind a bush. And you go, boom, and then all of a sudden the person starts rubbing their temples in pain. That is not how it works based on technology that we know about. The thing where it starts to get interesting, and these are things like the UFO situation, where just nothing really that we know about currently existing seems to make sense that could have caused the situation. So a declassified State Department report from 2018 found that India's short-tailed crickets were responsible for strange noises recorded by U.S. diplomats in Cuba that were thought to have potentially been connected to the attacks. A 2019 study published in JAMA, a respected medical journal, found that U.S. officials experienced some type of brain trauma, which is, that can actually be proven, that is true, but that can also be psychosomatic. So, of course, meaning they have no physical cause. Rubio dismissed the idea, telling Politico that I think that's quackery. The idea that people are psychosomatic because they're hearing random noises and clicking sounds in their head. The idea that they're psychosomatic, that is the quackery. The idea that our brave intelligence officials would ever lie or misrepresent something, that is the real quackery, according to Michael Rubio. I'd invite them to explain to the now dozens of people who have suffered documented brain injuries that in many cases have made them incapable of ever working again. Yeah, I will. You were the ambassador in Cuba. Sorry. I don't know. But I don't know what it is, but it was not some crazy Russian or Cuban spy hiding behind a bush, spraying some microwaves at you. That's BS. Unless you want to tell us something, U.S. government, President Biden signed a bill on Friday, though, to compensate diplomats who reported symptoms and get them proper medical care. All right, let's now turn the page to our last story in just 20 seconds.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's news flash.
Yes, it is, and this is a story here from Ken Klippenstein in The Intercept, and he writes that all students hope to learn from top experts in their respective fields. And really, frankly, especially when it comes to raising pharma money, graduate students at ASU, Arizona State University, have an unusual opportunity this fall to do just that. Because that's right, fresh off the summer of interning at a donor's winery, she is now going to Arizona State University. Senator Krysten Sinema of Arizona, currently holding up some of the most significant legislation we've seen out of a Democratic administration in years. She is now teaching a class at Arizona State University on how to fundraise. Not making that up. And again, it's not just small dollar fundraising. It's about developing grants and fundraising. It's one of the two classes Sinema is teaching this fall at Arizona State University's School of Social Work. The syllabus, which was obtained by The Intercept, says students will learn diverse fundraising strategies, again, for nonprofits, as well as how to cultivate donors, as well as large individual donors, by leveraging resources like opportunistic fundraising, finding supporters from major fundraising events, and, well, quote, again, direct quote, asking for money. You gotta ask for that bacon sometimes. Like, if you're gonna be a fundraiser, sometimes you just gotta ask for money, folks. And nobody is better than that than Krysten Sinema. The outline identifies the key course concepts and corporate giving, such as corporate giving, political strategy, influence, and power, as well as more socially conscious terms like discrimination, oppression, and privilege. So, they had to wokeify it. I'm sure Krysten Sinema was thrilled with that, being, she's just kind of a moderate conservative Democrat now. One of the required books is Fundraising for Social Change, ironic in light of Sinema's attempts to ensure things like corporate tax rates remain unchanged. Sinema spokesperson, shockingly, did not respond for a request to comment. That's not a really good investment in a spokesperson, I gotta say. It's like the Sinema syllabus is on The Intercept if you want to go check that out. She's a PhD, JD, MSW, MBA. Really tack on those titles there, Krysten. 3 semester hours you get, in the course it explores diverse elements that potentially form part of a nonprofit resource plan. Proposals, donated or volunteer materials and services, fundraising events and user fees, both technical and interpersonal political aspects of grantsmanship. Grantsmanship! Like, what a term that is. Fundraising and resource development are reviewed. All right, so, really quite a remarkable, very ironic, one of the perfect, kind of let them eat cake, very Sinema twist, like the exact type of thing you would expect someone like Krysten Sinema to do. Fundraising is obviously a subject that the Arizona senator knows a thing or two about, folks. Have you heard about this gal? She's raised an eye-popping sum of money from groups opposed to President Joe Biden's Build Back Better agenda. Sinema has racked up some $920,000 in campaign contributions from said groups, according to analysis from Accountable.us, a watchdog group that monitors corporate lobbying. In the past 2 years, she's received about tens of thousands of dollars in maxed-out contributions from private equity partners and investment firms, CEOs who stand to lose in the event of a tax hike on corporations or the rich, as The Intercept reported last month. Sinema recently told colleagues that she would not accept any corporate tax or income tax increases, the New York Times reported. She also threatened to obstruct major drug pricing reforms, which would drive down skyrocketing pharmaceutical prices industry-wide by allowing Medicare to negotiate them. Sinema ran on lowering drug prices in 2018. The Daily Poster points out, but change her tune, as we talked about in the beginning of the show, to have the pharmaceutical industry begin to court her. Since entering Congress, she has received more than $6 million in donations from her finance, insurance, and real estate industry buddies. It's really going to be interesting to see, what she does next. She is such a figure in politics. She is, normally when you get someone who's, an obstructionist, you get someone like Manchin, who is much more doing it for political reasons. Who wants the, West Virginia government. He wants to play politics to West Virginia, and, thinks that if he just, screws with the Democratic Party enough, he'll be able to get it done. I personally think that the politics and the Build Back Better agenda are popular in West Virginia, so I think that's a pretty bad strategy. Like, if you cared about actually the stuff in it, you could make it big appeal. I think an easy appeal to the West Virginia constituents, especially the Democratic side, to get behind this and actually put effort into growing the Democratic Party. He's just a political machine operator. But Krysten Sinema, she is something else. I think that is undeniable. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with her down the road, and especially what happens come 2024 with all this big energy to primary. All right. You know what? We could do a show tomorrow. I think we might. Stay tuned for that. It's Newsflash.